You know, son, there's a kind of pain that doesn't show up on your skin. It hides deep in your chest and burns slow, like coal under ash. That's the pain I felt the day my boy got married. I raised that kid by myself after his mama passed. Back then we didn't have much, an old pickup, a leaking roof, and a heart full of trying. But we had honesty. We had laughter. Every Sunday, we'd sit on that worn-out porch swing, share a plate of fried chicken, and dream about the kind of man he'd grow into. He used to tell me, "Dad, when I get married, you'll sit right in the front row, and I'll make you proud." I used to grin and tap his shoulder. "Son, you already do." Years passed, and he made something of himself, went off to college, got a good job in the city. Every time he came home, his clothes looked sharper, his words fancier. Still, when he hugged me, I could feel that same little boy in there somewhere. Then one spring afternoon he called. Said he'd met a girl, Madison. His voice was bright, nervous. "Dad, she's incredible. Her family's from California. They're kind of well off." I laughed softly. "Money don't scare me, son." He chuckled. "Yeah, but this is different. You'll see." When I met her the first time, she was polite, too polite. The kind of smile you practice in a mirror. Designer bag, manicured hands, that little glance that weighs a person. I noticed she looked at my calloused fingers and scuffed boots like they were foreign objects. Still, for my boy's sake, I tried. Brought her flowers, cracked a few jokes, even cleaned up the old truck before they visited. She laughed, but there was something missing, warmth. Her words felt wrapped in silk, but hollow inside. Months later came the wedding invitation. Embossed gold letters, resort address, dress code, black tie formal. Black tie. The last time I wore a tie was at her mama's funeral. I spent half my savings on a new suit, nothing fancy, just neat. Polished my old shoes till they almost shone. Even bought a tie that matched the color of my boy's suit from the pictures he'd sent. I wanted him to look out and see his old man and know Dad showed up. The day arrived bright and loud. White tents, chandeliers hanging from beams, flowers that smelled like someone poured perfume into the air. Everywhere I looked, people in expensive clothes holding champagne like props. I walked up to the entrance. A young man with a clipboard looked me up and down before letting me in. That's when I saw my son, handsome, nervous, happy. He hugged me quick, but there was hesitation, like he was afraid I'd wrinkle his jacket. Then Madison walked in. White gown, diamonds, that perfect movie star smile. She took one look at me, and the smile froze. Her eyes flicked over my suit, my shoes, my face. "Oh, you came." That's all she said. Before I could answer, one of her bridesmaids leaned in, whispering something. Madison's voice carried anyway, soft but sharp. "Well, he's authentic, isn't he?" A few nearby guests chuckled. My son's face flushed. "Madison, please." She waved it off. "I'm just kidding, babe. Don't be so sensitive." I told myself to ignore it. For my boy's happiness, I could swallow pride. But humiliation has a taste you don't forget, metallic, bitter, heavy. During the ceremony, the minister asked, "Who gives this woman to this man?" Madison's father, a tall man in a perfectly cut suit, stepped forward and said, "Her loving family does." They all smiled, camera flashes popped, and I just sat there, hands clasped, invisible. At the reception, I found my seat, back corner, near the kitchen doors. Name card read, Mr. C. Anderson. No father of the groom title. I stared at that card a long time. I handed him a rolling pin. "Now your turn. Make the pasta. Feel it. Respect it. Love it." As he worked, floured, dusting his hair, eyes focused, hands trembling slightly, I realized the cycle of lessons would continue. Not because I commanded it, but because life itself demanded it. My cousins flourished. My nephew taught cooking. My niece thrived in nursing. My other niece celebrated our heritage through art. And me? I watched, smiled, lived, knew that the Romano name, the heart, the work, the stories had survived, had thrived, not through wealth, not through appearances, not through social climbing, but through honesty, resilience, and love. Tony never came back to the restaurant. He called once, months later, asked if he could speak with Marco. Marco said yes. They met over coffee. Tony apologized for the arrogance, the lies, the shame. Marco listened, nodded politely, then handed Tony a small notebook. "Start here," he said. "Write your own story. Honest. No pretending." I thought about Tony sometimes. Wondered if he'd finally grasped the difference between being rich and being real. But I never waited for him to show me. Because by then, I had my real family, my real legacy, and that was enough. I closed the day's service in the kitchen, hands dusted in flour. The smell of garlic, tomatoes, and fresh basil hung in the air. I looked around at the laughter, the conversation, the warmth, and whispered, "Family isn't blood. Family is truth. Family is work. Family is love." And somewhere deep in that warmth, I felt peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you've done right, even when the world tried to tell you otherwise. Because in the end, son, life is simple. Love your people. Respect your roots. Tell the truth. And let the rest fall where it may. And that is the story of the day I lost a son, gained a family, and reclaimed a legacy that no money, no pride, and no social ambition could ever erase. Dissolved. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Karma had a way of working quietly, but surely. One day, about 6 months later, Tony came to my restaurant. He didn't call ahead. Just walked in, shoulders slumped, eyes avoiding mine. I was kneading dough behind the counter. I didn't stop. Didn't look up. "Dad," he said quietly. I glanced at him. "Tony, no handshake, no hug." Just words hanging in the air. I understand now. About respect. About family. About what really matters. I wiped my hands, leaned against the counter. "Son, you're welcome to understand it. But understanding isn't the same as living it." He nodded, looked down at the floor, said nothing for a long while. Finally, he asked, "Is it too late?" I chuckled softly. "Too late for what? Apologies? Recognition? Sure, maybe. Too late to learn? Never. But you'll have to do it the hard way, like everyone else who forgot who they were." Tony left that day, carrying the weight of lessons he hadn't earned, yet unable to ignore. I went back to my work, kneading dough, rolling pasta, teaching apprentices the ways of old Naples. It was simple, honest, true. Winter melted into spring. I invited my cousins over for a Sunday meal. The house, modest and rented in the Richmond district, smelled of garlic and simmering tomatoes that we laughed. Shared stories, cooked together, and I realized the true meaning of legacy. Not in a house, not in money, not in social appearances. Legacy is in the lives you lift, the truths you pass on, the courage to be real in a world that rewards pretending. I called my grandson into the kitchen one afternoon. "You see, kid," I said, rolling dough, "life isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving yourself right to the person staring back in the mirror every morning. That's the only opinion that counts." He nodded solemnly. "So, Tony was wrong about you." I smiled. "Tony? Son, he's still learning." But yes, he was wrong. About everything that really matters. The weeks after that Christmas felt lighter. I walked the streets of North Beach, greeted old friends, and noticed things I'd taken for granted. The smell of fresh bread from Molinari's, the chatter of kids in the piazza, the way the fog rolled over the bay at dawn. Life, I realized, doesn't ask for approval. It just moves. And if you try to control it, you end up missing the small miracles along the way. Marco, Sophia, Pepe, and Lucia had settled into their new lives. Marco's restaurant was thriving, not fancy, not overpriced, just real Italian food made with heart. I went there one night, sat at a corner table, and watched him teach a young cook to roll pasta the way his grandfather taught me. Every motion precise, every gesture intentional. Pride swelled, but not the kind that shouts. The kind that whispers, "This is what matters." Sophia had started her nursing program at UCSF. She'd been nervous at first, unsure of her accent, worried about the American system. But she flourished. I visited the hospital one morning and watched her calm an elderly patient who had been frightened by the machinery, speaking softly in Italian, translating the unfamiliar sounds into comfort. Pepe had started his consulting firm for Italian businesses. He was meticulous, prepared, and honest. Clients called him because he understood both worlds, the American systems and the Italian traditions, and he navigated the gaps with integrity. Lucia's art was hanging in a gallery in the Mission District. Paintings that celebrated our heritage, not hid from it. People paused in front of him, studying the brushwork, the emotion, the soul embedded in each piece. She'd captured not just images, but identity, the kind Tony had once been ashamed of. And Tony, well, Tony became a cautionary tale in the neighborhood. His law firm let him go, citing public humiliation and conduct unbecoming. He landed at a smaller firm, handling minor personal injury cases in his social circle slowly. I sat there staring at that photo until my eyes blurred. Then I set it by the window, next to the picture of my boy when he was 5, missing front teeth and a grin big enough to light up a room. That's the funny thing about truth, son. It's heavy at first, but it lightens everything it touches. That night, as snow began to fall, I whispered a prayer. Not for revenge, not for justice, for grace. Because grace is what turns old wounds into wisdom. And that's how I knew the story wasn't about being low class or high class. It was about being true class, the kind of class that money can't buy and lies can't fake. Then he said, I moved out. I couldn't stay there. Everything feels fake now. I didn't say I told you so. Instead, I poured him coffee black like mine. We sat there, 2 men with calloused hands and tired hearts, just letting the quiet do its work. After a while, he said, I thought she loved me for who I was. I answered softly, maybe she did, son, but she didn't love herself enough to be honest about it. He stayed a while that day, helped fix the porch rail, shared dinner, laughed at old stories. When he left, he hugged me longer than he ever had before. And that's when I realized something. The night I exposed a lie, I didn't lose my son, I got him back. That was the true reward. A few months later, the story of Madison's fake family made the local papers. People whispered, judged, pointed fingers. But I kept quiet. I'd already done my talking. Let folks draw their own lessons. Instead, I poured my energy back into the recovery center. We added new counseling programs, one about identity, one about self-worth. Whenever I spoke to a crowd, I'd tell them, truth may hurt for a minute, but lies will rot you forever. And they'd nod, because everyone knows at least one Madison in their life, maybe even in their mirror. Sometimes late at night, I'd think about her, wonder if she was okay. Not out of pity, out of hope. Because if a man like me could crawl out of 12 years of darkness and build something real, maybe she could too. One evening, around Christmas, a letter arrived. No return address, just my name in shaky handwriting. Inside was a small photo, Madison volunteering at a community shelter, hair tied back, no makeup, and a note. Mr. Anderson, you were right. I'm learning to be real. Thank you for the truth. You know, son, when you finally tell the truth, the world gets real quiet. That's what I noticed the morning after that dinner. The air itself felt lighter, like the whole town had exhaled. I brewed my coffee, sat by the window, and watched the sunrise melt through the blinds. For years, I'd started my mornings that way. Black coffee, soft light, a heart full of gratitude. But that day, something else stirred inside me. Not pride, not revenge, just peace. Later that morning, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. When I answered, there was silence at first, then a trembling voice. Mr. Anderson, it's Madison. I didn't speak, just listened. She said she was sorry for the words at the wedding, for the lies, for the shame. Told me she'd built that fantasy family because she'd grown up ashamed of her real one. Her dad was in prison. Her mom struggled with addiction. She thought money and appearances could rewrite her past. I closed my eyes and rubbed my forehead. I'd heard that story before, in the faces of people who came through my recovery center, hiding behind perfect smiles. Madison, I said quietly, you don't fix your past by burying it. You fix it by facing it. She cried, thanked me, then hung up. That call didn't erase the hurt, but it softened something inside me. See, forgiveness isn't a gift you give the other person. It's one you give yourself. It's the only way to stop carrying someone else's mistakes on your back. A few weeks passed before I saw my son again. He showed up unannounced one Sunday morning, standing on the porch in jeans and a wrinkled shirt. No city polish this time. He had that look a man gets when he's been broken down and rebuilt the hard way. "Dad," he said, "can I come in?" I smiled. "Doors open, son." He sat at the table, same seat he used to take when he was a kid doing homework. For a minute, we just listened to the clock tick. I didn't gloat, didn't raise my voice. I just reached across the table and placed my hand on my son's shoulder. "Son," I said quietly, "you once told me you'd make me proud. You already did. But pride goes both ways. It's not about money or looks or fake smiles. It's about truth." Then I turned to Madison. "You called me low class at your wedding. Maybe you were right. I'm not polished, not rich, but I built something honest. And that's something no actor can fake." She didn't say a word, just sat there, trembling, the image of her fake parents still frozen on the wall behind her. I tipped the waiter again, nodded, and walked out. Outside, the night air felt different, lighter. For the first time since that wedding, I could breathe. As I reached my truck, I heard my son calling my name. He caught up, eyes wet, voice breaking. "Dad, I'm so sorry." I hug him tight. "Don't be sorry, son. Just be honest from here on out." And that's where part one ends, son. Truth doesn't need to shout. It just waits for the right moment to be heard. This time, though, I carried something new, a quiet calm, and a small flash drive in my pocket. The room glittered with crystal glasses and rehearsed laughter. Madison saw me and smiled, tight and brittle. "Oh, Mr. Anderson, so glad you could join us." "Wouldn't miss it," I said, my voice steady. My son hugged me, a bit longer this time. He looked tired, lines on his forehead that weren't there before. I patted his back. "You doing okay, son?" He nodded. "Yeah, just a lot going on." I could tell. Dinner rolled on. Toasts were made. Stories told. Madison laughed loudest at her own jokes. And then she stood up to speak. "Family," she said, raising her glass, "isn't just about where you come from. It's about where you're going." Applause filled the room. I waited until the clapping died down, then slowly stood. My knees creaked, but my voice didn't. "You're right, Madison. Family is about truth, and truth has a funny way of showing up when it wants to." Every head turned. She blinked, confused. "Excuse me." I smiled gently. "Mind if I share a little something? Just a few minutes of family memories." My son frowned. "Dad, what?" "Trust me, son. Just watch." I nodded to the waiter I'd tipped earlier. He dimmed the lights and rolled in a small projector, the kind I'd used at recovery workshops. The first clip appeared on the wall. Craig, the fake father, sitting in my chair, saying, "Yeah, I played Mr. Harper. 2 days' work, nice paycheck." Gasps rippled through the room. Madison's glass slipped from her hand and shattered. The next clip, her mother, smiling nervously. We were told to act refined, classy. She said her real parents wouldn't fit the theme. By the third clip, the room had gone dead silent except for the hum of the projector. When the lights came back on, nobody looked at her. My son's face had drained of color. "Madison, what is this?" She stammered. "They're lying. It's edited." But even she didn't sound convinced. That's when I smiled, not out of joy, but clarity. If she wanted a world built on illusion, I'd show her what happens when the curtain drops. I started small, called the event planner from the wedding, a polite woman named Cheryl. I said I was thinking of hosting a charity gala at the same venue and wanted to know who handled the decor, catering, and photography. She rattled off names, same team as Madison's. Then I asked, offhand, "And the family photo set you arranged for the Harpers, can you send me a quote?" There was a pause on the line. "Sir, I'm not sure what you mean." "The actors," I said gently. "The ones you booked as her family." Another pause, then a nervous laugh. "Oh, Mr. Anderson, I suppose word gets around." That was all the confirmation I needed. The next step was quieter. I reached out to each of the family members one by one, told them I was producing a short documentary on truth in appearances, offered double their usual rate for honest interviews on camera. Every single one agreed. Over the next few days, my living room turned into a confession booth. Craig, the fake dad, admitted he'd been hired for 2 days at $1,500 a pop, wardrobe provided. The mom said Madison insisted they call her sweetheart between takes to make it feel authentic. Each of them signed release forms, smiling awkwardly into the lens as they told their stories. By the end of the week, I had enough footage to make even Hollywood blush. I didn't plan to humiliate her, at least, not at first. But I did want my son to understand who he'd married. So I waited for the perfect moment. That moment came with an invitation, an anniversary dinner 6 months after the wedding. Fancy downtown restaurant, private room, 20 guests. I was surprised to be invited at all. Maybe guilt had softened her edges, or maybe she just wanted to flaunt her new lifestyle. I showed up in the same suit I'd worn at the wedding. Old but clean. Tommy's words echoed in my head all night. Actors, fake family. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the wedding photo my boy had sent. Madison standing proud between people I now knew weren't kin to her at all. I poured a cup of black coffee, the kind that bites your tongue, and let the bitterness steady me. If there's one thing a man learns after years of hard work and hard mistakes, it's patience. You don't swing wild when you're angry. You aim. So I aimed. First, I called Tommy again. "You sure about those names?" He chuckled. "Buddy, I've seen those folks in detergent commercials. I'll send you the agency list." By noon I had it. Headshots, rates, contact numbers. Her dad was a theater actor named Craig Benson. Her mom, a woman who did local perfume ads. Even the little flower girl, just a child model hired for photos. I leaned back in my chair, rubbed my temples, and whispered, "Lord, you do have a sense of humor." At first, I thought about telling my son right away. But the more I pictured his face, embarrassed, torn between love and shame, the more I knew that wouldn't help. He had to see it for himself. So I waited. Weeks passed. I kept busy at the recovery center I'd built from scratch. Our little empire of second chances. 12 years sober, 22 million in operations across 3 states. And yet not a soul at that wedding knew who the low-class man in the back row really was. Maybe that's why it stung so much. Because I'd fought tooth and nail to build a life of honesty, only to be laughed at by someone living a lie. One morning, I opened the newspaper, and there she was, Madison, featured in a lifestyle column. Young philanthropist expands family business. Family business. The caption under the photo listed the same fake father and mother, posing in front of a borrowed mansion. Tommy's words echoed in my head all night. Actors, fake family. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the wedding photo my boy had sent. Madison standing proud between people I now knew weren't kin to her at all. I poured a cup of black coffee, the kind that bites your tongue, and let the bitterness steady me. If there's one thing a man learns after years of hard work and hard mistakes, it's patience. You don't swing wild when you're angry. You aim. So I aimed. First, I called Tommy again. "You sure about those names?" He chuckled. "Buddy, I've seen those folks in detergent commercials. I'll send you the agency list." By noon I had it. Headshots, rates, contact numbers. Her dad was a theater actor named Craig Benson. Her mom, a woman who did local perfume ads. Even the little flower girl, just a child model hired for photos. I leaned back in my chair, rubbed my temples, and whispered, "Lord, you do have a sense of humor." At first, I thought about telling my son right away. But the more I pictured his face, embarrassed, torn between love and shame, the more I knew that wouldn't help. He had to see it for himself. So I waited. Weeks passed. I kept busy at the recovery center I'd built from scratch. Our little empire of second chances. 12 years sober, 22 million in operations across 3 states. And yet not a soul at that wedding knew who the low-class man in the back row really was. Maybe that's why it stung so much. Because I'd fought tooth and nail to build a life of honesty, only to be laughed at by someone living a lie. One morning, I opened the newspaper, and there she was, Madison, featured in a lifestyle column. Young philanthropist expands family business. Family business. The caption under the photo listed the same fake father and mother, posing in front of a borrowed mansion. I stared at that car a long time. When the speeches started, Madison's mother stood and talked about old money and high standards. Guests laughed politely. Then Madison raised her glass. "Some of us come from humble beginnings," she said, looking right at me. "And some of us worked hard to rise above them." People clinked glasses, thinking it was a joke. But I saw the smirk, the intent. My son didn't say a word. He just stared at his plate. I felt the room tilt. My ears rang. For the first time in my life, I felt small. Pause. That night, I left early. Walked out before dessert. Outside, the cool air hit me. I loosened my tie, looked up at the stars, and whispered, "Lord, I hope you're watching." Because I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just heartbroken. But heartbreak, that's how anger is born. And anger, when handled right, becomes something sharper. A month later, I got a call from one of my old buddies, Tommy. He works in the event business, the same one that handled the wedding. He said, "You won't believe this, Cadale. You remember that fancy family of hers? They weren't on the guest registry. Look them up. Half of them are local actors." I froze. Actors? Yeah, he laughed. Hired help. Wedding company sometimes arranges fake family sets for photos. Guess she wanted to look rich. And that's when the slow burn turned into a